Mr. Beanie nervously tells Daniel that since he apologized, they will give him a break. Mr. Necklace starts backing away, telling his girlfriend that they need to get out of there now. Daniel gets confused as to why they left so quickly. Everyone starts to praise Daniel after scaring the adults away. They talk to themselves, saying that they were all pooping their pants. Daniel is clueless as to why the adults left the fight so suddenly. The scene changes, and we are shown the adults smoking in an alleyway. They are annoyed that a bunch of high schoolers got the better of them. So Mr. Necklace tells his girlfriend to call some of the juniors of the school he used to rule over to get some payback. They arrive and stand at attention. He asks them what year they are in now, and Glasses tell him they are seniors. Mr. Necklace asks Glasses if he can ride his bike, and Glasses says yes. But he didn't have the bike with him at that moment. He tells him he is lying, but he stands by the fact that he doesn't have it. Mr. Necklace changes the subject and asks Glasses if he knows anyone from the fashion department at J High. He tells him he does know one person, but he doesn't like mixing with them because everyone from J High is known to be crazy. Necklace cuts him off and tells him to bring that person to him. Glasses asks him why he wants him, and he tells him because there is someone that needs to be taught a lesson on how to act towards people older than them. We are back with Daniel, and he thinks to himself that the liquor has started to kick in. The bullies start talking to each other about previous fights they had and everyone they have beaten up. One of them tries to get close with Daniel, but he shoots him a death glare. The bully is stunned. Daniel looks him dead in the eye and says 2 words. "Let's go." The authority that Daniel put into those words shock everyone around the table. The alcohol has affected his balance and he needs to sit down. He says he is thirsty, so he goes to drink some water, and halfway through he realizes it is more alcohol. He starts to get sleepy from all the booze he has drunk. His vision starts to get blurry and his eyes start to close. He wakes up in his original body. Now that he is not intoxicated, he gets embarrassed about all the things he did and said. He goes back to sleep to switch bodies again. He wakes up in his house. He looks at the ceiling and at his hand. An hour has passed, and Daniel comes to the realization that he didn't change bodies. He gets dressed in world record time and darts out the door. He ran up the stairs, looked around the corner, and saw his body lying there, being slapped by the bullies who are trying to wake him up. Daniel wonders to himself why he couldn't change back. Just then, one of the bullies turns around and sees him standing there. He asks him who he is and why he is just standing there. They recognize him as the fatty from the convenience store. Daniel gets scared as their friendly expressions from earlier have turned into hungry hyenas. 2 bullies start towering over him, and the other bully asks him if he wants them to take naked pictures of him again. Zoe gives him a sour look, and the owner of the place demands him to show her his ID or he must get out. He looks down and sees his passed-out body on the floor. Daniel thinks to himself how he will explain to everyone why he needs to take his other body home. Just then, Zach comes crashing through with a large smile on his face. Zach gives Daniel a great hug and says he is so happy to see him. He gets defensive of him since everyone was looking at him like prey before. He gives Daniel some booze and asks him if he wants to drink. Daniel is relieved that Zach is drunk right now. Otherwise, it would have been a one-sided beatdown. Zach asks him why he is here, and Daniel says that he is there to get his friend, Daniel. This shocks everyone as they wouldn't think that Daniel in his new body would hang out with people like Daniel in his original body. They call him a liar, but he insists that Daniel knows him. Zoe connects the dots of their conversation earlier and asks if he is the mafia boss that stays with him. Daniel replies by saying that he was ordered to fetch Daniel by his housemate. This story is a lot more believable since Daniel in his original body does not give off mob boss vibes. Zoe gets excited and asks him if he knows where Daniel lives. Daniel dismisses her questions, and Zach goes over and comforts Daniel. He tells Daniel that he wants to take them somewhere as a reconciliation gift. We are shown Daniel carrying his other body on a road. They arrive at an arcade where there is a punch power machine. Zach tells him to watch close. He tries to teach Daniel how to throw a proper punch. He gets his stance and tells him to guard the cheek with your other fist. He puts both his arms up and shows him the basic posture of boxing. He takes one step forward and moves the weight from his pelvis into his shoulder. He throws the punch, moves the weight into his fist, and jams it into the machine. The machine exclaims that Zach got a new record, and then he goes back to being drunk. Zach wishes Daniel a good night, and the bullies follow him. Daniel looks at the punching machine and wonders to himself if he should give it a shot. He looks around to see if anyone is watching him. He bundles up his hands, throws his fists like a boxer, lunges forward, takes a deep breath, and completely misses the punching pad. Feeling completely embarrassed, he picks up Daniel and walks home. Vasco comes out of a shop with Jace and sees Zach's new record. He tries it for himself and beats Zach's record by 18 points. Just before he is about to leave, he sees a rip mark on the side of the pad where Daniel threw his punch. Vasco thinks to himself that even though Daniel only grazed it, the pad was ripped through the plastic and into the cushioning. He glances at Daniel, who is walking away, and wonders to himself if Daniel will ever overpower him one day. Daniel finally makes it home with his new body. It's the next day and two girls start admiring Zach. He has a date, and he promised not to pick a fight with anyone. A few hours earlier, we can see Mira talking to her friend, and she mentions that she is going to walk to the library later to study. From behind, Zach tells Mira that he will be studying too and asks if they can go together. She looks him dead in the eye and tells him no. Mira says that Zach gets into too many fights, but he promises to not fight while blushing, and this was enough to get a yes from Mira. We are back to the present, and Zach is reminding himself that he absolutely cannot fight with anyone. Mira calls out for Zach, and she says that she is excited to go to the library with him. They arrive at the library, and Zach is excited to spend time with his girlfriend. Zach starts thinking of them sitting next to each other and eating together. He thinks to himself that he is in heaven. Not too soon after they sit down, he gets incredibly bored. He starts making marks on the desk to entertain himself. Apparently, the girls' and the boys' study room is separate, so they aren't allowed to sit next to each other. He starts grumbling to himself, and one of the students that are studying there asks him politely to quieten down. Zach shoots him a death glare but calms himself so he doesn't end up in a fight. His phone buzzes, and we are shown messages from Mira asking him to meet her at the snack bar because she is hungry. The scene changes, and we are shown two of the adults from the bar, and they are arguing about something. Mid-conversation, the girl stops and looks at Mira and Zach from the other side of the room. She recognizes Zach from the bar, and Mr. Necklace remembers him as being the weakest one. He glances at her chest and gets annoyed that his girlfriend doesn't have the same thing. He looks over at his girlfriend, and she also starts to get frustrated. Zach is innocently munching down on a corn dog. He looks around the room and notices that they aren't the only couple at the library. He tells Mira he is going outside for some fresh air and takes out his cigarettes. He hasn't told Mira he has started smoking yet, so he must smoke in secret. He sees two people walking up to him, so he looks at them intimidatingly. An old woman asks him for directions, so Zach gives an explanation to where she wants to go, hiding his cigarette as a show of respect. Mira is revealed to have been watching him this whole time, and she is happy to see Zach being kind to other people. The adults from the bar show up, and they underestimate him because their only impression of him is when he was previously drunk. They tell him to call his friend from before, but instead, he just blankly looks at them. The scene changes, and we can see Daniel's mom looking at a piece of paper with an address on it. The scene switches back to Zach, and the grown-ups continue to berate him with insults. They talk to each other about how he cried like a little baby last time they met, and this makes him embarrassed and wishing he never got drunk that night. Zach looks at them with a serious face and asks them if they are trying to start a fight. Just then, he remembers Mira telling him that she doesn't like it when he fights. He allows them to go and says it's their lucky day. They all burst out in tears and start pointing fingers at him. Mr. Necklace asks Zach if he has lost his marbles, and they all continue to laugh at him. He turns around telling them that he won't give them a second chance. Just then, the adults look like they are plotting something devious. He joins back with Mira, and he asks her if she wants anything to drink. He goes to the till and asks for 2 sodas. Just then, Mr. Necklace and Mr. Beanie cut in line and call him a loser. However, Zach remains calm and tells them not to cut in. They ask him what he is going to do if they cut in, and they show Zach their big friend who will protect them. One of them pets Zach as if he is their pet, and he clenches his fist in anger, but he can't start a fight, otherwise Mira will be upset. So he removes himself and Mira from the room, so he doesn't start a fight. The adults are angry, they didn't get to show off their big friend. As Zach arrives at his desk, he realizes his potato chips he bought for Mira have been stolen. He hears some crunching from across the room, and he sees the 3 adults munching on his snack. He is taken aback and starts to get furious, but clenches his fist once again and controls his anger. Later, the big guy is seen shooting rubber bands at Zach. Zach shoots him a death glare and tells the guy to stop irritating him. They pretend to be scared before erupting into laughter again. Zach gets up and slams the door on the way out. He is trying to stop himself from exploding in anger, and just in the nick of time, Mira slides in next to Zach. She asks him if Mr. Necklace and Mr. Beanie are trying to start a fight with him, but he denies it. Suddenly, the big guy shows up and messes up his hair that he spent an hour getting ready. He is at the breaking point while telling them to go away nicely. The big guy persists, asking Mira for her number, and says she is way out of Zach's league. She stands up in defense of Zach and signals to him that she wants to leave. Just then, the big guy pins Mira under his arm and tells her he wants more than just her number, while moving his hand to her chest. But before he could carry out this terrible act, Zach darts towards him and sucker punches him right in the jaw, sending multiple teeth straight to the tooth fairy. The adults are speechless at his sudden act of bravery and strength. Zach apologizes to Mira for breaking their promise of no fighting. Now that Zach has broken the promise, he takes his anger out on Mr. Beanie and Mr. Necklace. He tells them to never lay a finger on her again, and Mira is shown with a smug look on her face. The scene changes and we can see Daniel's mom waiting for him to wake up. She thinks to herself that he must have been exhausted since he is in deep sleep mode. We can see Daniel in his new body at the door, and he wonders why the door is open and hopes no one has broken into his house. The scene switches again, and we can see Zach apologizing to Mira for breaking their promise. However, it is revealed that she is actually happy that he stood up for her, and she wants to go on another trip to the library with him. We switch back to the scene with Daniel's mom, and she wonders whether to wake him up or not. Just as she is about to nudge Daniel, in his new body, walks through the door. His mother turns around and asks who he is. Daniel is gobsmacked that his mother is in his house. He starts thinking of an excuse to say. He greets his mom asking if she is Daniel's mom. Daniel says that he has heard a lot about her. He explains that his original body, who he just calls Daniel, is living with a friend to cut down on the rent, and he is that friend. He tells his mom that Daniel sleeps during the day after school so that he can be energized for his part-time job so that he can afford his living expenses. His mom has a smile on her face and says that Daniel has grown up. She asks him for his name, and he says it is Park. She says that is similar to her son's name. What a coincidence. She asks if he can tell her a little bit more about Daniel and how it's been living with him. We switch scenes and we can see Jace in a cafe. He welcomes the customers walking inside, but the customers turn out to be Daniel and his mom. Jace instantly recognizes him as the fashion department transfer student. He asks her what she wants to drink, and she says she wants an Americano. She looks at the prices and then tugs on Daniel's arm. Daniel's mom asks him if she can have water instead because it is too expensive and she doesn't want him to spend too much money on her. Daniel is taken aback by his mother's question. He reassures her that he can afford it and gets the 2 Americanas. He starts to remember all the sacrifices his mom had to make for Daniel to transfer school, so buying an Americano is the least that he can do. He makes a promise to himself that one day he will pay back his mother for all the hardships she has had to go through because of him. Jace puts 3 coffees down on a table, and we zoom out to see a few more of the architecture members sitting down. Jace warns Vasco not to get in a fight with him because of what happened last time at school. Otherwise, he will be fired. Daniel's mother starts to boast about her son and says stuff like he grew up to be so big and handsome. Daniels is getting embarrassed as he is hearing things that his mother wouldn't usually say in front of him. She signals Jace and asks if she can take the boxes in the corner of the room. She apologizes to Daniel if she is embarrassing him, but she can't miss out on the opportunity. She asks Daniel not to tell her son about her collecting boxes to earn extra money for his school fees. She takes out a 5,000 yen bill and asks Daniel to continue being friends with him and to please not bully him. Daniel grits his teeth and tries to hold back his tears as he accepts the bill. He knows that 5,000 yen is a lot of money for his mother, so he really doesn't want to take it. But he needs to sell the idea that his Daniel's friend, Park, and not Daniel. She waves goodbye to Park and tells him that next time she will bring some side dishes to enjoy together. He hears his name being called, and it's Vasco telling him that he's not as honest as he thought. He tells him to follow him, as he wants to have a fight with him. He leads Daniel to a construction site and tells him to prepare himself. He takes off his jacket and tells Daniel to do the same, but he is frozen stiff in fright. Vasco cracks his knuckles and tells him to start the fight. Vasco thinks back to the time that Daniel made original Daniel carry him on his back, and now even ripping off his mom by accepting money from her. He tells Daniel that he is unforgivable and puts his arms up ready to start the battle. He tries to back away from the fight, telling him that he's not taking advantage of anyone, but Vasco doesn't want to hear any of it. He throws a left jab and barely misses Daniel's face, missing it by mere centimeters. Vasco starts to wonder how much training Daniel had to do to achieve the physique he has now. Daniel tries to clear up the confusion again by telling Vasco that he is mistaken, but before he can finish his sentence, he goes for a right jab this time, but Daniel is more prepared. Vasco continues throwing punches, but Daniel is able to weave and slide between all of them. He steps back and tries to figure out how to strike Daniel without him being able to dodge. Daniel shouts at Vasco, insisting that he has done nothing wrong. Vasco thinks to himself that Daniel is either a good liar or he feels no guilt. He tells Daniel to give him the money that he received from Daniel's mom. "I will give it to the convenience store worker," thinks Vasco. Daniel now starts to think that Vasco is just another bully that steals from the weak. He is used to giving people money as there was no other way to defend himself. But this time it's different. This money was given to him by his hardworking mom. It's special to him. So he tells Vasco that he will never let go of the money that Daniel's mom gave to him. Vasco smirks and thinks to himself that Daniel is now showing his true colors. He puts his fists up and imitates Zach's boxing posture. Vasco thinks to himself that if it is an outboxer he is fighting, he can definitely win the fight. He plans to trade blows but twists his head last second to soften the blow. Vasco puts his fists up and they resume the fight. Daniel takes a step forward just as Zach would do. Vasco sees that Daniel is imitating Zach's fighting style and moves in as well. They both end up with a fist in front of their face, and Vasco exclaims that he has won. Some time passes, and we see the bare knuckles at the construction site. They find Vasco's jacket on the floor, so they keep exploring the place, and they find Vasco on the ground knocked out. We are now at the convenience store with Daniel's original body. He is happy he still has the money and hopes he didn't kill Vasco by mistake. He thinks back to when he was fighting Vasco and wonders how his body moved, how it did when he was fighting Vasco. Before Vasco landed the blow, Daniel spun his head around and moved closer to him and performed a backspin elbow straight to his jaw. In that moment, Vasco knew that he couldn't beat Daniel with how he is now. Jace stands over Vasco and he mutters, "Jace, I lost." Jace is filled with anger and wants to avenge his friend. We shift our focus to a new character who shares his story about life and finances. He describes his home as pretty standard and his wardrobe as nothing special. If he were in a role-playing game, he'd be fully equipped with just the basic gear. His mom hands him down a pair of his uncle's old shoes, and he decides to wear them to school. He's anxious that his classmates will tease him for wearing shoes that are a decade old. However, as he walks into school, two girls notice his footwear. To his surprise, they reveal that his shoes are actually quite rare, with only a few thousand pairs ever made. This character is named Lee. Lee loved the attention he got from wearing trendy clothes, so he began fixing up vintage shoes to stand out. He also splurged on some fancy glasses and mentioned that he traveled 2 hours just to buy chrome rings that are popular among a famous idol. Feeling all decked out in gold, he heads to class, but soon gets called out by Zach for their matching shoes. Zach doesn't want anyone to think they're matching on purpose. However, since Zach is trying to keep the peace for Mira, he just warns him not to let it happen again and walks off. Lee misinterprets this, thinking that Zach got intimidated by his chrome heart rings and hurried away. Proud of himself, he turns around but notices Jay's fingers, which are filled with chrome hearts. Looking around, he realizes that others have chrome hearts on their fingers too. Just then, Daniel enters with a big smile, sits next to Zach, but tells him not to talk to him or look at Mira. Lee feels envious of Daniel because he always seems to attract attention, no matter what he wears. He glances at Daniel's bag and notices it's old and worn out. His shoes aren't from a fancy brand either, and it looks like he wears them every day. As Lee talks to himself, he can't help but point out that Daniel's style is lacking, leading him to think Daniel must be struggling financially. Everyone around assumes that since Daniel is good-looking, he must be wealthy. So this revelation about Daniel surprises them all. Jay stays quiet, staring out the window, and I can't help but wonder what's on his mind. The scene shifts to the Bare Knuckle Architecture Club, where everyone is waiting for Vasco to show up since he's been missing all day. They start chatting and speculate whether the rumors about him losing a one-on-one match are true. Everyone turns to Jace for some insight, but he remains silent. Suddenly, he receives a text from Vasco. A message comes through saying that his screen is broken, and he's curious about the repair cost. He sends Jace a screenshot of his phone to show just how bad the damage is. Jace can't help but think that you can't really show a broken screen with a screenshot, and he struggles to keep himself from laughing. With Vasco out for a bit, Jace starts to consider how to handle Daniel. He tells everyone that Vasco texted him to take it easy and hold off for now, but one of the crew members sees Vasco's message on Jace's screen and realizes he's just stalling. He thinks to himself that Jace doesn't have what it takes to lead the Bare Knuckles, so he tells himself he needs to step up and restore their leader's honor by himself. The school day is over, and we can see Jay leaving his desk. Daniel pops up and with a big smile tells him to be safe on his way home. Jay just stares at him. Daniel thanks him for helping him in his fight with Zach. He waves goodbye, saying his mom is about to pick him up. Jay, once again, just stares. Two girls talk about him and say that, although he looks like royalty, his clothes and bag make him look like he is poor. The guys in his class call him a beggar and says that, without his looks, he is just a cheap-looking loser. They pledge to make the girls know who he really is without his good looks. At the back of the school, we can see 4 members of Burn Knuckles talking amongst themselves, getting ready to beat up the new transfer kid, Daniel. They all start gossiping about Jace, telling each other that he's just a wannabe leader who can't handle things like Vasco does. The ringleader smirks, pleased to see his plans falling into place. But just around the corner, we spot the mysterious Jay, casually smoking a cigarette and listening in on their whole conversation. They're plotting to jump Daniel after school, since that's when he's usually by himself. The next day after school, Daniel is walking home, humming a cheerful tune. Suddenly, he runs into someone on a quiet street. Could it be the Bare Knuckles seeking revenge? Nope, it's Jay, carrying a bag over his shoulder. Daniel asks if he lives nearby too. Without a word, Jay sets the bag down. Daniel looks inside the bag and it turns out to be filled with expensive clothes. He tells Jay that it is too expensive for him to take, but Jay signals to him saying that he was throwing out the clothes anyway, as they don't fit him anymore. He looks down, thanking Jay for his birthday gift, but when he looks up he is nowhere to be seen. He looks around and sees a pile of more bags filled with clothes. We see the aftermath of a fight between the Bare Knuckles group that wanted to beat up Daniel and a mysterious fighter who beat them all up. I wonder who it could be. The leader wonders who the blonde guy was who beat them all up and how he got so strong. It's the next day at school, and the 3 guys who were previously calling Daniel cheap for not having nice clothing are getting ready to tease him about his empty bank account to make them look better. To the surprise of the 3 musketeers, Daniel strolls in decked out in the latest fashion. He's rocking a stylish waistcoat, camo rockstud sneakers, a fancy bag, and a designer watch. The 2 girls, who were curious about his money situation just a few days ago, are now praising his outfit and saying he looks even more handsome. One of the musketeers asks Daniel about his wallet, since it doesn't have any luxury brand logos on it. Daniel simply replies that it's a gift from his mom, and he wouldn't trade anything in the world for it. Lee starts to rethink his own choices, wondering if all the pricey clothes he bought were really worth it. Everyone keeps complimenting Daniel, saying he must really appreciate his mom. Daniel waves at Jay, thanking him for the clothes he got yesterday, but Jay isn't looking his way. Still, he's thrilled that his new clothes fit him just right, and we can see Jay crack a smile. At a talent agency, we see Vin Jin laying down some amazing beats. The manager mentions that he's one of the top contenders from the latest auditions. He asks if Vin Jin is the last one, and the staff member replies that there's still one more participant. We find out who that last person is, and the manager immediately frowns, instructing the worker to turn away anyone who looks like that. He tells the last participant to leave and then congratulates Vin Jin for winning the audition. The guy boards a bus where 2 girls gossip about him, saying he looks like an otaku and probably doesn't have many friends. He notices the empty seat next to him, but people choose to stand instead. Later, he goes to bed, jotting down lyrics for a new song, and tells his grandma to hang in there a little longer because he's determined to sign with a record label and make enough money so she won't have to work anymore. We're at school, and everyone is showering Vin Jin with compliments for signing with a famous talent agency. He glances at Duke, the guy who got rejected from the agency for not being good-looking enough, and makes a snide remark about feeling bad for being the only one who passed the audition. Then, Vin strides over and kicks Duke in the head, telling him he shouldn't have even bothered showing up and that he was embarrassed to have him there. Some classmates ask Vin if he plans to participate in the charity date auction at the festival. This auction is a big deal, where freshmen enter, and girls bid on different guys for dates, with the highest bidder winning. The girls are chatting about all the guys who will be there and which ones they're interested in. Some girls are really into the guys from the fashion department. Others have a thing for the guys in architecture, and a few are crushing on Eli from the beauty department since he's the only guy there. But most of the girls are super excited about a new transfer student in fashion. The catch is that girls from other schools can also bid for a date with him, which means it's going to be pretty pricey. While the girls are chatting, one of Vin friends starts riding on Duke's back. At the end of the day, Duke is heading home from school and asks his grandma if she had a lot of sales. But she avoids the question and instead asks if he's hungry, telling him to eat quickly. He explains to her that the food is for selling, not for eating. Just then, he hears someone calling his name, and Duke's heart sinks. It's Vin and his crew. Duke's grandma asks if they are his friends and insists they should eat since they must be starving. They devour all the food at the stall, leaving a huge mess behind that needs to be cleaned up. Duke spots a bag of chips that fell on the ground, and his grandma comments on how energetic his friends are. Duke is left speechless and feels bad, apologizing to his grandma for letting her down. The next day at school, everyone starts making fun of how awful his grandma's cooking is. There are drawings on the board warning everyone not to eat at his grandma's stall. Duke feels a surge of anger as he clenches his fist. Suddenly, Vin yanks Duke's hair and tells him to get out of the walkway. Duke can't help but think that maybe things would be different if he were good-looking and not stuck in his short, chubby body. A girl named Mary asks if there will be any other contestants in the festival besides Vin and his friends. The classmates whisper that there's no way anyone else could win, but then Duke raises his hand and boldly declares that he will be joining the festival too. It's lunchtime, and you can spot Daniel and Jiho grabbing some food. Daniel looks over at a few tables and notices Vin picking on Duke. This brings back memories of how he was treated at his old school. Daniel turns to Jiho and asks if he can invite Duke to join them for lunch. The cafeteria buzzes with reactions, as everyone is surprised that someone like Daniel would sit with Jiho and Duke. Vin listens quietly to the chatter about how nice Daniel is being. Suddenly, a cup is thrown in Duke's direction, and Vin tells him to fetch some water. Jay shoots a glare at Vin from behind Daniel. Zach steps in and tells Vin to get the water himself since his hands aren't broken. Vin threatens Zach, asking if he wants to get hurt. Zach retorts by questioning if Vin can even see with those glasses on. Just then, Vasco chimes in. Vin is told by Vasco to pick up his cup. He starts to get annoyed and wonders why everyone is bothering him today. Vasco asks him if his mom ever told him to not throw things on the floor. Frustrated, Vin kicks a chair as he storms out of the cafeteria. Once the chaos settles, all the girls flock to Daniel, asking if he plans to join the charity date auction. Mary comforts Vin, saying she understands why he didn't stand up for himself. Meanwhile, Vasco looks around the room and begins to cry. The school day wraps up, and Daniel is seen cleaning the floor in his classroom. He reflects on the girl's question and considers whether he should perform at the festival. Daniel glances around to check if anyone is nearby. We see Duke wandering through the hallways, lost in thought, wishing he had a tune to go with the lyrics he had jotted down. If only he could find someone who could really sing. Suddenly, Daniel opens his mouth and begins to sing. This immediately grabs Duke's attention. Daniel is perched on the windowsill, belting out a song. Duke feels a rush of excitement, thinking he might have just found his perfect partner. He thinks to himself that Daniel's voice seemed to reach out to him, filled with emotion, space, and a hint of fragrance. I couldn't figure out why his voice felt so isolated, even though he was such an amazing guy. When the song finished, Daniel glanced around anxiously, worried that someone might have overheard him. Suddenly, someone on the other side of the door said, "Excuse me." Duke approached Daniel and invited him to perform at the festival. Daniel was completely taken aback. Duke expressed his faith in Daniel's rapping skills and encouraged him, saying that if they teamed up, they would really impress the crowd.